Welcome back to James Barker Sculpture. 1 year on from sculpting our glass egg, we look back at the entire process, both the theory and the practice of cutting glass and the way that that affects a light, before building our glass sculpture from start to finish and showing you where it finished up 1 year on. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to dig some glass out, let you have a look at it and understand what I'm going to do with it. I'll explain a bit about the process, how I got started working in glass. Over the weekend or perhaps Monday, I'll get started building this. So putting the slate to one side and now concentrating on glass. A lot of people ask, how did you ever come to work with glass? Well, just the same way as I came to work with slate. When I spotted an opportunity, a lot of slate was getting thrown out, and I asked the person that was throwing it out if I could use it and take it away with me and use it for a sculpture. And they couldn't have been happier for me to have done so. The same sort of thing happened when I came to work with glass. I needed a piece of glass for a coffee table. I went to the local glazing company and I didn't actually find the piece of glass that I was after, but I did spot a huge pile of glass in the corner that was getting thrown out. They had no other use for it and it was just going to be crushed and recycled. So I asked if I could have it, and they were slightly bemused, probably thought I was completely crazy when I told them I was going to break it up with a hammer, but that's exactly what I did. I took the glass away, I filled my trailer up with it, took it back to the workshop, and I set about making my first sculpture. The first sculpture I made was actually a glass urn. This is it being photographed at Dalhousie Castle down near Edinburgh, just south of Edinburgh near Dalkeith. That piece I made about 8 to 10 years ago. So just to show you exactly how I used to make my sculptures with a hammer, what I'd do is I would just get some glass like this that would have just been discarded. It probably wasn't so irregular until the glaziers just threw it to the side, and then of course it's broken pieces like this. Similar to the way I would shape a slate. If you haven't seen me shape slate before, then check out some of my other videos and you'll see exactly how some of my other sculptures are made. I would just use a hammer and a piece of channel, shaping stone, just the same as I will with this. So first of all, I need to put on my gloves. These are special safety gloves. They're 5E rated, which means they're cut proof and won't get sliced by the glass. If you are tempted to have a go at doing this at home, then it really is important to wear a good pair of gloves and make sure that you have eye protection on, because the glass is incredibly sharp. And now I've got 2 right gloves, so that's not handy, is it? I have to go and find another one. So when I go to shape this piece of glass, all I do is offer it over the edge of the piece of steel, and that means that I can predict much more easily where it's going to break. So just by working the edge of this with the hammer, you can see the edge that I've created. It really does cut the light very nicely, as you can see. With this glass egg that we're going to make, I want a much more precise look, so I'm going to use some completely different tools in order to create these nice fluid curves. I don't really want this sort of broken edge appearance, although it does look very effective when you see the glass urn that I made. I want it to be much more precise, much sharper and much cleaner lines. My techniques have been modified over the years. I don't use a hammer quite as much as I used to, but these are my own techniques that I've come up with myself. 2 or 3 specialist tools now, so things have moved on a little bit. But as far as actually being taught goes, I'm completely self-taught, so just please do bear that in mind. Just to explain why I use glass, why it appeals to me, you can probably see here the way the light's travelling through the glass. It has a real ethereal quality, and if I actually show you it on the palette, which is just over here, so the glass that I use for this sculpture is going to be 10mm float glass, which is just the same glass that you would expect to find in windows and things like that. It's not toughened or anything, and it is very sharp when broken. A lot of people do ask me, where do you get the green glass from? But It is actually clear glass. I know that it is greener than a lot of glass when you see it on its edge. That seems to be due to the sand that's used in its manufacturing process. You can see here as well, this is quite a small piece of glass. The light's not got a long way to travel through it, and it appears quite light in colour. The way it lights up is completely different to a thicker piece. These pieces here are just over a metre square, so the light's got quite a long way to travel, so they appear really dark. That's really important to consider that when you start thinking about how you're going to make the sculpture. If I was going to make the sculpture solid, like my sculpture light at Auchindoun, it appears really dark during the day, and just as the sun's going down in the sky in the evening, it really lights up. And that's because the light travels through and illuminates the opposite side of the glass. Just where it hits that point where it's got no further to travel, it lights up the edge of the glass. And so I really need to consider that. I want this piece to appear quite light in colour, quite a light green colour, almost like of the effect of water. So I'm going to make it quite a thin wall. In other words, there'll be quite a large void inside. Anyway, I'm beginning to ramble on. So over the next few days, what I'm going to do is get busy building this sculpture, and hopefully you guys are going to see it all complete in time for Easter. I've had a really good think to myself what size of sculpture I want to make, because I know that the egg is going to be 35 centimetres wide. What I'm going to do is split this glass into halves and then try and get 3 circles out of each piece of glass. Anyway, this is a glass cutter that even people that are used to working with glass as a hobby at home will be quite familiar with. There's a wooden handle here, it's got a brass connection here, and at the end we have a tungsten carbide cutting wheel. You may be able to see that here. It's only about 3 or 4 millimeters in diameter, and it is allowed to spin round as the glass cutter is passed across the surface of the glass. Here I have a slightly more sophisticated version of the same tool. This is much better quality. It's brass here, and it's got a reservoir inside which can be accessed here, which you fill with oil. The oil travels up through the reservoir and into behind the wheel. When the wheel turns, it gets coated in oil, and then the oil can also help to fill the cut and open it up. Also, another advantage of this tool is that the head can turn and rotate, so that if I wanted to cut a curve, it can follow the curve much more easily, where a lot of glass cutters are really more suitable for cutting in a straight line. So I've lifted the glass up to the right height. As I said, it is pretty heavy, so you want to have it at the right height so that you can catch the offcut quite easily. These offcuts will only be maybe about 15-20 kilos, but still you want to make sure that you're as safe as possible, and if it's easier to catch it as it breaks off, then that's got to be good. So here I have a T-square which I'm just going to place across the surface of the glass like this. So now that I've measured out, I've put my T-square halfway up the glass, and I'm going to use the glass cutter to score a line. So now that I've scored the glass, I could just pull it off the edge of the palette and apply force, and it would likely just break in the right place. Better to be safe than sorry. What I'm going to do is just gently open it up from one end and then gently tap it from underneath. So a few years ago I had a really big sculpture to make. You might have seen it. It's a glass cone, and I was really concerned about wasting too much glass. So what I purchased was this special tool from Germany. You can place it against the surface of the glass like this, but on the other side from below. It's got a rubber seal here around the surface of the head that you plant on the glass, and so it doesn't bounce when you strike the glass. It's calibrated so that you can change the dial here from minimum round to maximum, and it basically changes the force at which the glass is struck. So the first thing to do is turn the setting to minimum. I place the head of the hammer against the lower surface of the glass directly below where I've scored the upper surface, and then pull the trigger. Now that's not opened the cut at all. I then turn the dial up one so that it strikes the glass a bit firmer. Now perhaps you can see here where the glass has just started to open up underneath. Now that it's opened up right out to the edge, I'll pull the glass out a bit further and continue to open the cut up. Now I'm going to do exactly the same at the other side. Pull the glass over the end of the table. Place the head against the glass and then strike. Again, it's refusing to open up, so we'll just turn the dial up once. Once the cut's opened, I can turn the dial back down again. I don't want to apply more force than's required. With a straight line like this, there's not really any need to open that cut all the way up. I can pull this out, apply some force, and it will break in the right place. Famous last words. And there we go, we have quite a neat break. Don't know what the weather's like where you are, but it's cold here today. So let's get on and get the rest of the glass cut. Right, so now that I've cut the glass to a much more manageable size, the next job is to begin cutting circles. In order to do that, I use this tool. The principle behind this tool is that it's got a suction cup in the centre. Suction can be applied by using this handle. It's got a calibrated arm here which spins through 360 degrees, and it can be adjusted here to various different sizes. When I'm using this tool, whatever size diameter of circle I'm cutting, I try to leave 10% of that diameter between the edge of the circle and the edge of the glass, and that means it's much less likely to break unpredictably out towards the edge of the glass. So now that I've got this set to the required diameter, what I do is I start directly in from one of the corners. I don't want to start here, it's applying too much stress to the edge of the glass. So I start here and applying about 15 kilograms of force, I just rotate it through 360 degrees. Just like that. And because I want the egg to be hollow, I now move this in a bit further and I can cut another circle out of the centre. Although these cutters can be used with oil, I don't actually use any as I'm not looking for a perfect break. I'm looking to create lots of incidental fractures in the glass which will add character to the finished sculpture. Now that I have my lines nice and neatly scored, it's time to start knocking these circles out. I get asked a lot why I only cut one piece of glass out of each large square and waste the rest. I can assure you that very little glass goes to waste, and anything that I don't use on this sculpture I will save and hopefully use on the next. As a last resort, if any glass isn't suitable for any other sculpture, then I will recycle it. If any glass isn't deemed suitable for a future sculpture, then I will, as a last resort, have it recycled. So now that I've tapped all the way around this circle, you can actually see that the circle is completely formed. It just needs released from inside that glass. If I just take the camera and show you on the edge here, you can actually see that the circle is broken all the way through. Because the circle is such a tight fit, there's no way of getting it out there without making cuts around the edge and pulling pieces of glass out in order to release this. So that's what I'm going to do now. So after making a few cuts and breaking them through, I'm ready to remove these sections of glass and retrieve the circle from inside. Right, so here now that I've got this circle out, you can really see the difference between the effect I've created here. Here you can see that it's much smoother. It will need to be sanded down with a diamond pad, but it really is a lot smoother and it's much more fluid-like than the first look that I showed you. Now if you're watching this video with a view to cutting circles of glass for some other means, then that's exactly how you do it. However, for the purpose that I'm using it for, I want to now break this circle into various sections as I'm going to use those pieces to build my egg. So let's go ahead and do that. Now before I can start building with them, I have to clean them up and rub the edges down. In order to do that, I use this diamond pad. It's just got diamond grit encrusted in it, and I just rub it along the edges, and that's all that it takes to take off these sharp edges. If there's quite a large overhang, then sometimes I use the trusty old hammer just to chip that off. At the same time, I want to clean any dust off so that when I go to build with them, they sit nice and tight together. It's quite amazing how easily that sharp edge is removed already. Just after 2 or 3 passes across it with the diamond pad, I can run my finger around there and it's not sharp at all. So I've taken off most of the sharp edges, and as I said, sometimes you do get a little stubborn piece of glass that is quite sharp and just needs to be knocked off. I'm not sure what a glazier or someone with a formal training would do to remove that, but as you know, I've got no shortage of hammers in the workshop, so I'm just going to take a hammer and gently chip that off. And that's all that's required to move that edge. Now I'll just take the diamond pad and just take the roughness off it again. Now that I've got all the sharp edges rubbed down, it's time to start building. Now with many of my larger sculptures, especially the slate sculptures that are so heavy, the logical place to start and the only choice is to start at the bottom. However, with this sculpture, I'm actually going to start at the widest point and build the bottom of the egg upside down. Once I've stacked that and I'm happy that all the pieces of glass are the right shape, I'm going to take it to bits again, fix it together, turn it over, and then build the remainder of the egg the right way up. That's the plan. Let's see how it actually works out. So it's really important at this stage to make sure that I have got all the glass shaped to the right size. So I'm trying to be really careful just to make sure that I get this curve right from the beginning. So when you see me looking down like this, I'm trying to check that it is coming almost straight up before it starts curving. There's a few pieces of glass that I can't get to fit, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut those. I'll speed this up. The previous video shows exactly how I cut all the glass, so I'll put a link in the description of this video if you want to go and check it out. At this point, I'm building the glass without fixing it in place. Only when I'm absolutely satisfied will I go back and secure each piece, allowing me to flip the workpiece over, and then when the sculpture is complete, I'll go back and rebuild it, bonding each piece of glass so that it can be safely moved. Well, I've finally finished the bottom of the egg. It's taken much longer than I anticipated. Rebuilt it and bonded it together. Now I've flipped it over and I'm ready to continue building. This piece relies on the sun to truly shine. When I'm finished the egg, the effect that I'm looking to achieve is for the sun to hit the edge of the glass, then travel round inside the glass, and when it reaches the end where it's broken here and the pieces are fit back together, the light should travel in through the edge of the glass. These pieces should reflect the light and look like little darts of light travelling away through the wall of the glass. As you then walk round the egg, the light appears to move, and that really brings the piece to life. I have been fighting a bit of a battle where the sections ought to obviously be round and concentric and just coming in each time. However, they were getting slightly away from being round and becoming a bit more oval. I've tried to gradually get it back to being round. If I can't suddenly change direction, or the overall form of the egg's going to be lost. Right, that layer's looking pretty good, so on with the next one. Things are really starting to take shape now, but one of the most important things is to really finish the job off well. I always find when you're making a sculpture, your eye's always drawn to the top and the bottom. Those are where the lines start and finish. So that being the case, it's really important that these pieces of glass are cut to just the right size. And the other thing, of course, is that because this sculpture relies so much on light, it'd be very easy just to cut one circle out of glass and add that on, and it'd be the right size, and the overall form of the egg would be right. However, the way the light is reflected might be completely wrong. The likelihood is that if I cut it out of one piece of glass, apart from the fact it's not going to reflect the light the same because it's not broken, a large piece of glass like that is probably going to look much darker. So first of all, I'll cut it out and then have a look at it. With my circle cut out, I'll go ahead and add it to the sculpture and check to see how the light compares to the rest of the sculpture. So there's no discernible difference between this piece of glass and the rest of the sculpture, and I'm quite happy that it doesn't even need broken. It looks really good. And the other thing is, the egg shape, which has essentially been sculpted from within this egg, is at a point where it's coming to its natural conclusion. So I'm quite happy just to cap it off with this piece of glass. So now that I'm on the homeward stretch, I'll go and shape the last few pieces of glass, which can be really quite tricky just to get it finished just as I want it. And let's see how it turns out. Now at this point, first time around, you guys told me you wanted to see more of the finished sculpture, so 1 year on, this is where the sculpture finished up. A lovely lady from Hampshire in England who saw me make this piece here on YouTube got in touch with me, and I'm happy to say that this sculpture now has a fitting new home. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do me a huge favour and give it a big thumbs up, and be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're safe and well, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.